In this video, we're going to be talking about Star Marine, and I've been working on this one for a while. Since 3.20 has come out, I've been hitting the Arena Commander pretty hard, and I'm happy to say that I am now the #1 ranked player for Star Marine in the world, and my organization is also #1. This is undisputed. Does this mean I'm awesome? Probably not, but we already know I'm awesome, so you don't have to talk about that too much. But what this at least illustrates is that I've put the time in to experience and understand these mechanics and the system to give you a more qualified opinion and to better help you understand and hopefully help CIG understand on what to change and what to fix. We're not going to be talking about bugs here. We're not going to be talking about jank, none of that stuff. We are simply going to be talking about the game as it is, Star Marine, the balance and the philosophy and everything else. The changes discussed here are also going to translate to the PTU, or the PU rather, into the persistent universe. This is not just about Star Marine, this is about StarCitizen FPS combat as a whole. Before we can really get into the balance and philosophy and design of StarCitizen FPS combat, we must get to the root cause of all the issues, what's causing all the problems in the first place. And the biggest problem, and the root of all evil here, is the time to kill. The time to kill in StarCitizen is way too fast. It is, on average, half of a second, with every weapon, regardless of what it is or what type it is, being incredibly close to one another. On the screen here, I've put an image of the most used weapons. I don't have shotguns or sniper rifles on here, or even really pistols, because they're a little bit different, but these are all the primary weapons in the game, and you can see, if you pause and look at it, how similar they are in TTK, with the average being, again, about half a second or lower. This is way too fast for anybody to really make weapons feel different or feel balanced at all. There is this erroneous belief that having a fast time to kill allows players who are good to quote-unquote skill express themselves and do better, when in reality, a fast time to kill doesn't benefit anyone. It doesn't benefit bad players, it doesn't really benefit good players. It ends up frustrating everybody. And it's not very conducive to an environment for players to learn how to improve, because they just died. They don't really know why they died or anything. And it's not very rewarding for good players because it doesn't really benefit tracking or good positional anything. It doesn't really matter. It's just this very hyper twitchy shoot and hope that you get a lucky headshot and get a kill. So this game would benefit significantly by having the TTK lowered. Now, for more transparency and help you better understand, in StarCitizen, players have about 70 hit points. Now, there are modifiers for damage, okay? And this is all from the data files. So players have 70 hit points. If they get shot in the head, they take 7 times the damage. Don't know why it's 7 times, but that's why they take. The torso is 3.5, and the arms and the legs are 1x. Right off the bat here, the modifiers are way too high. I would lower these completely. I'm sure there's a mathematical reason as to why this is, but let's, for the sake of this argument or this discussion, let's say how I would have it. I would generally have player hit points at 100. I would have the headshot damage multiplier down to 2. The torso would just be normal damage at 1.0, and arms and legs would be 0.5, so half a damage. That's just a very rough number, but you kind of see what I'm getting here. We're trying to get a more consistent set of damage. Having an extreme headshot multiplier on paper sounds good, but the reality is most players accidentally get headshots, and this creates a very rough and inconsistent set of damage. If the headshot multiplier is still there, which it should be, and it's a bonus, it's a 2x bonus. It's not the end-all be-all. Good players who get 1 headshot will be able to get 2 headshots and 3 and 4. So you're still allowed to, doing air quotes here, skill express, but you're not having the headshot be the end-all be-all. Consistent damage is also good because it allows players to correct themselves and to just not fall over dead and understand, okay, well, I'm in a bad situation. If I'm quick enough, I can maneuver back to cover and heal or something else. It's just a lot better. I have never played a game that has this absurd type of headshot multiplier, and I've also never played a game where players die this quickly outside of something like Squad, which is very strange because we're playing like a futuristic shooter game where there's supposed to be armor, but it doesn't seem to matter. While this isn't a core element of the video, it still relates to the topic of TTK, and that is armor. We have 3 types of armor in this game, light, medium, and heavy, and each one has a corresponding damage reduction. Light being 20, medium being 30, and heavy being 40. I do not really enjoy having different armor types in games like this because they present a false choice, and they also create this inconsistency in damage, and I like consistent damage. Now, if I had my ideal way of doing things, I would remove medium armor completely, and I would only allow for light and heavy to be options. Light armor would be able to carry less weapons, but would be able to pilot vehicles, and heavy armor would be for frontline infantry, which could carry a variety of weapons, numerous types of weapons, and just in general be more durable, but could not pilot vehicles, maybe outside of ground vehicles. That's a general quick little rant about that, but food for thought, just consider that in your head when you're thinking about things. Because right now, currently in Star Marine, you're only allowed to wear medium. I would much rather wear heavy. I'm in a frontline role. Why would I ever want to wear light? I wouldn't. The game is forcing me into medium, and I can't pick light, but since I'm in direct combat, I would always want to wear heavy for the 40% damage reduction. CIG should consider this and figure out ways to make these armor types more enticing even for combat roles, even if it's limiting weapons, like light being limited to sniper rifles, things of that nature. Just consider it. But there's my 2 cents on that. Before moving into weapons and weapon types, the next biggest issue that StarCitizen has is recoil or lack thereof. Weapons don't really have any recoil in this game, and that leads to a lot of problems. That leads to certain weapon types being completely overpowered. It leads to boring gameplay where you don't really master a weapon because there's nothing there to master. You pull the trigger and it just shoots. And by not having any real recoil or manageable recoil patterns, the weapons just don't feel that good. They're not that fun. They're not that interesting. So the best solution to this is simply to give them a pattern, give them a recoil that you can control and balance around the recoil. Does the weapon have a ton of damage per shot? Then give it a lot of recoil to reflect that. Is it a weapon that's meant to be fired, from the hip or point fired, as it were? Then give it a lot of, horizontal recoil to kind of focus on it being a close combat monster. Look for inspiration from other titles that do FPSs. I'm not saying copy them, but don't try and reinvent the wheel. Look at what games like Battlefield 3 or 4 have done, and take inspiration from that. It's okay to take inspiration, because right now, every gun just feels the same. They play the same, they shoot the same, there's no recoil pattern, there's no recoil anything. There's nothing to master. They just point and click, that's it, and that is boring. So the first weapon we're going to talk about is the best weapon, and that is the LMG, the light machine gun in StarCitizen. If you've played Star Marine, you will now notice that there is absolutely no reason to use anything but the LMG. The LMG is the best weapon in the game. It's the best rifle. It's the best sniper rifle. It's the best submachine gun. It's the best pistol. It's the best shotgun. It's the best weapon, period. Nothing kills like the LMG does in StarCitizen, Star Marine, or PU. There's a couple fixes for this. I think we need to explore all of them. The first, quickest, dirtiest fix right now for CIG to do is remove all LMGs from Star Marine until they are rebalanced and reclassified. The reason why these weapons are so powerful, is because they're for a game that doesn't exist. When you think of an LMG, you think of a weapon designed to provide a base of fire and support or defend an objective. That type of gameplay does not exist in StarCitizen, whether it's the PU or Star Marine. You're typically running, you're mobile, you're moving, you're running and gunning. You're either in space, you're on the ground. It's not there. Mobility is king in Star Marine and StarCitizen PvP in general for FPS combat. So you would have to have a game mode or gameplay designed around these weapons having a use. They would have to be deployed weapons, weapons that get deployed and they hold positions. There would have to be a use for them like that. And that requires whole new tech, right? Deploying bipods, deploying these weapons somewhere, going prone and deploying. That's how they would have to be used. So the short solution is, again, to remove them until rebalanced. And the rebalancing solution is, there's a couple things here. You have to either, one, make them a deployed squad weapon, similar to Battlefield or Squad. Or two, you reclassify them as heavy rifles. And by reclassifying, you might think to yourself, what's that going to change? What does that matter? By reclassifying a weapon, you create a different expectation of the weapon. So if you called it a heavy rifle and you change its characteristics to be similar to a Well, a bigger rifle, a bigger bullet with a lower rate of fire, and a lower but slightly higher magazine capacity, so lower than a light machine gun, a little bit higher than a rifle, you've created a heavy rifle. It's a lower rate of fire, higher damage per shot, not as mobile, but it's still, it's a bit beefier. So now you can kind of balance around that point of view, and that's what I would do. So consider that. Because until LMGs are fixed or removed, no other further weapon testing will happen, and no other weapon will ever matter. This has to be fixed. Rifles should always be a versatile weapon in any game. They should be your standard starting point. They're not going to be as good as submachine guns in close combat. They're not going to be as good at sniper rifles at long range, but they're going to be somewhere in the middle, and that's generally where I like these weapons to be. Unfortunately, in StarCitizen, you only really have one choice for rifle, and that's the Karna rifle. This weapon vastly outperforms its competitors, and there's really no reason to use anything but it. It has an insane amount of damage per shot. The fast TTK makes it the only option in the rifle category if you want to perform. Now, the changes I would make to this are pretty simple. Again, a lot of these balance discussions hinge off of them making the time to kill across the board generally a bit slower. The changes I would make are pretty simple. I would make the standard weapon that you use, the absolute middle of the ground, would be the Gallant Rifle. I would remove the burst. The Gallant Rifle is currently set up to be the perfect middle-of-the-road assault rifle, but the burst is what holds it back. The lower damage, higher rate of fire weapon would be the P4AR, and again, as we covered, the Karna would be the lower rate of fire, higher damage weapon. The goal here then would be to bring these in a little bit tighter, make them have some subtle differences, and make them feel different, but you already now have the foundation for these three assault rifles to be similar but different. So again, Gallant Rifle, make that your standard, remove the burst. Karna Rifle, lower rate of fire, higher damage. P4, higher rate of fire, lower damage. Instant balance. Submachine guns should be your close combat monsters. These are weapons that you're not really too worried about aiming down the sights of and firing, precisely. You're more about throwing a laser on there, getting up close and personal, firing from the hip, and getting your shots and getting your damage out. It's a very aggressive, hectic style of play. It's a shock trooper, almost. That's how I envision these things. In the current version of the game, the only real worthwhile one to use is the C-54 or maybe the Custodian. But they're just, in my opinion, very poorly balanced. The Lumen, again, being a burst weapon, it's crap. Stop with the burst weapons. Please, CIG, stop it. They're garbage. I don't like those. And I definitely don't think there should be a burst submachine gun of all things. It's very anti-thematic here. But if I had to give you my feedback and my suggestions on making these better, it would be to, again, follow that assault rifle balance, that assault rifle balance category of a middle-of-the-road, a lower rate of fire, higher damage, and a higher rate of fire, lower damage type of balance, and then expand from there, and then do your side grades. So pick a weapon to make your standard, make two variants of that weapon, and then fill in where needed. Because right now, the only option you really have is the C-54. Shotguns all totally suck and are not worth using. At all. They're all bad. They're all atrocious. They suffer from the same garbage that video game shotguns suffer from. It's that the pellets apparently, disperse from 10 yards away into a massive barn-sized pattern, and that's it. Shotguns, if I had to change them, would be a lot better. But they would be the opposite of, whereas an SMG is your spray and pray kind of damage, high TTK, the shotgun would be a more precise close combat weapon. One where you aim it, you go for center of mass, you get the pellets on target, and you do tremendous amounts of damage. But the close combat wouldn't be point blank like it is now. It would be a respectable range. The cone of fire would have to be tightened. And this goes for all of them. So you tighten the cone of fire, and you go from there. Because right now, with the range as pitiful as it is, there's really no use to these at all. I'm a shotgun fan. I wish shotguns were usable in StarCitizen. They're simply not. Make them more deadly, tighten the cone of fire, extend the range, make these things a viable alternative for close combat like the submachine gun. If the sniper rifle is the king of long-range combat, precision long-range combat, then the shotgun should be the king of precision short-range combat. Think of it that way. People want me to talk about pistols, but what can I say? The time to kill is so short in the game that I never am in a situation where I have to pull out my pistol. I'm either dead or my opponent's dead. I don't ever have to, reload mid-combat or anything like that. Generally, pistols in shooter games are used as a secondary weapon that if you have to, it's quicker to pull it out than it is to reload. Think Battlefield or Call of Duty. I like that style. Sue me. I don't care. I prefer it that way. But right now, StarCitizen pistols are something that you consciously want to use. So I can't offer you much feedback on them until I actually have a reason to use them as a backup, which is what pistols are meant for, right? It's like Jeff Cooper said, a pistol is just a weapon that you use to fight your way to a rifle. I'm sorry if I don't think they're a primary. When it comes to sniper rifles, you only have one option, and that's the P6LR. It completely outshines everything else. Nothing else is even remotely comparable to this weapon. If you hit their body, they fall down because of force reaction, which is stupid, by the way. They fall down, and then a follow-up shot kills them, or you hit them in the head and they die. And for whatever reason, this weapon seems to have zero issue making headshots. Now, I will not lie to you. I do not like sniper rifles in games, but I am not stupid enough to, think that I'm the only one. I'm probably in a minority there, maybe. But I will try to be as fair about this as possible. If they must exist in the game, then they should be the most effective when used to make headshots that are precise and aimed. They should not be as they are now, which is a very run-and-gun style play. When I use a sniper rifle in StarCitizen, I don't use a scope. I put something small on it, like a 1X, and I run around with it like it was a rifle and one-shot people. That is probably not how these are meant to be used. So they should be a stationary weapon, similar to how, if in a perfect world, the LMG was also a stationary weapon, and they should just be used to make precise shots and kill people by shooting them in the head, right? That's it. It's really simple. There's not too much thought that goes into it. Now, in the current state, if they were to nerf LMGs or remove them, if you wanted to perform, I'm pretty sure the next step would be the P6LR with a 1X scope on it, and that would be what people would move to. They are that powerful, and the only thing that's keeping them in check is how overpowered the LMGs are. So consider that. I know there's sniper fans out there, but when the LMG eventually gets its comeuppance, if the sniper rifles, especially the P6, aren't looked into, they will be the next weapon, because they will overshadow everything else in their current form. The next and final thing I want to talk about before the summary is force reaction. Force reaction is something unique to StarCitizen. It's kind of like flinch, but on steroids. If you've ever been shot with like an FS9 or a shotgun or a sniper rifle, you may notice your character gets pushed or knocked down sometimes. This is quite possibly one of the most infuriating and annoying experiences in a game. I would rather be outright killed in-game than be knocked down on the ground, have all control removed away from me, the player, and then be killed by a follow-up shot. Just have me dead. I don't know why force reactions in a game. I don't know who thinks it's a good idea, but it's absolutely stupid. It's really dumb. And I'm going to go ahead and say that's got to go. Just completely, full stop, remove force reaction. Do you want to have on explosives? If you're all about immersion, then sure, put it on explosives to knock people down. Even then, I think it's stupid. If you want crowd control effects, use it with like a flashbang or something else. But removing control of my character because I got shot by a shotgun or a sniper rifle or an FS9 LMG or some other ballistic weapon is super annoying, it sucks, and it's not fun. So think about that, CIG. I would rather have my character outright killed than to be knocked on the ground and then killed. Crowd control does not belong in a shooter game unless it is a flashbang or something that does not remove complete control of my character. So in summary, I would say that StarCitizen's FPS is not amazing, and it's not even good, but it's definitely not bad. It's passable. It would not be fair to compare StarCitizen FPS combat to a dedicated FPS game like Battlefield, Call of Duty, or, CS or Valorant. But I think that that's not an excuse for it to be bad. It's not an excuse for it to be below the industry standard either. I think it could be on par. It could be a reliable standard of its own in the industry for FPS combat. The first thing that has to change for this to happen is the time to kill has to be increased, and the damage needs to be more consistent. The headshot multiplier, way too high. The hit points, way too low. The weapons kill, way too fast. Those things need to be brought into line first, because no weapon balance or discussion can happen until that happens first. The next thing is weapons need to be given characteristics and performance and personality. Recoil patterns, purposes of a role, gameplay styles with the weapon, that needs to happen as well. Because right now, there's nothing remarkable really to talk about any weapon. They're all just completely unremarkable. The next thing that I would say, and I briefly just talked about it, force reactions, gotta go. Annoyances, gotta go. Get rid of them. I don't think StarCitizen is a game that can succeed as an FPS. I think it definitely can. And I would even argue that with a few changes, it can be its own kind of FPS. But right now, the moment-to-moment gameplay, the building blocks, and a foundation need to be improved. Because they're very bad right now. But it can be there. So thanks for watching. This was a little bit of a longer video. And the reason why you know I'm right is because I am #1 in Star Marine. Dang it. Okay? And that means I'm important. And you gotta listen to me.